Welcome to the 2021-2022 School System Planning Launch. The timeline for Super App is as follows. Today, November the 6th, 2020, the Super App and School System Planning resources are released. February the 5th of 2021, Super Apps are submitted to the LDOE. In March of 2021, the LDOE is going to provide feedback to school systems on alignment to CIR and UIRD approval and funding requirements, and school systems submit revised super apps to LDOE as applicable. In April 21st of 2021, competitive funding allocations will be submitted to BESI for approval. All super app launch materials can be found in the department's school improvement library. To access the presentation recordings, click on the image below. The objectives for this session are: the school system planning teams are going to review Louisiana's academic plan, explore accountability updates, discuss schools in need of intervention and the rationale for the 2021-2022 CIR and UIR requirements, view the 2021-2022 new optional funding opportunities, and unpack the resources and supports available to school systems. We'll begin by looking at Louisiana's vision for school improvement. Leaders of improving schools ensure that all students learn grade level content alongside their peers. Students with unfinished learning are provided additional support focused on preparing them to achieve mastery of grade level content. High school students have graduation plans aligned to coursework and credentials relevant to life after high school, including AP, IB, dual enrollment, and statewide industry credentials. Groups of teachers, including core, special education, English language, and reading interventionists, collaborate weekly. An established instructional leadership team meets weekly, focused on improving student outcomes through systems and structures, and that all educators and students are afforded equitable access to opportunities in the learning environment and treated with dignity and respect. New to our strategy this year are structures. Improving schools implement 3 foundational structures to drive professional and student growth. They are the instructional leadership teams, learning communities, and observation and feedback cycles. For the instructional leadership teams, they are to develop a long-range plan for improving educator and student outcomes. Weekly meetings focus on reviewing teacher and student data that align with improving classroom instruction, incorporating best practices for high-impact leader actions, and planning for regular, high-quality feedback and support through an observation and feedback cycle for educators. Learning communities are established to provide weekly collaboration times for groups of teachers, including core, special education, English language, and reading interventionists. Teachers in the instructional leadership team plan for the use and implementation of high-quality curriculum, share best practices for teaching and learning, plan for individual lessons with embedded supports to address unfinished learning, and study the units within the curriculum. Learning communities can be implemented in a variety of structures, such as common planning time, student and teacher data analysis, teacher support, professional learning partnerships, and the use of on-campus leaders, such as content leaders, intervention content leaders, and mentor teachers. The observation and feedback cycles are led by the instructional leadership team and are frequent and cyclical. The collection and analysis of data around those observations and high-quality coaching focus on improvements in instructional practices and student outcomes. Leaders of improving schools and each leader within the school, the intervention content leaders, the mentor teachers, the professional school counselor, in partnership with professional learning partners, play a role in supporting teachers to improve outcomes for their students. Super App facilitates school system planning. The first step is to identify your priorities. School systems will do this by reviewing data and identifying their priorities for the coming year. Next, after identifying priorities, you develop an aligned budget. School systems will budget formula funds and request competitive funds in alignment with priorities. And then lastly, we implement with support. School systems implement their approved plans with the support from the system relations team and their professional learning partners. 2019-2020 accountability results. Due to the impact of COVID-19 on school closures, school performance scores and letter grades were not produced for the 2019-2020 school year. On March 20th, 2020, the U.S. Department of Education approved a waiver request by the Louisiana Department of Education, waiving most assessment, accountability, and reporting requirements for the 2019-2020 school year. As part of that waiver, the U.S. Department of Education required the LDOE to maintain the existing list of schools in need of intervention from the 2019 release. As such, schools have not exited nor entered intervention status from the 2019 release based on the 2019-2020 school year. And this file uses the 2018-2019 school year data as the most recent year of data. As part of that waiver, school performance scores and letter grades will not be produced for the 2019-2020 school year. This means LDOE was required to maintain the existing list of schools in need of intervention from the 2019 release. As such, schools have not exited nor entered intervention status from the 2019 release based on the 2019-2020 school year. And this file uses the 2018-2019 school year data as the most recent year of data. The LDOE plans to refresh the Louisiana School Finder in fall 2021 with accountability data from the 2020-2021 school year. As part of Louisiana's ESSA plan, any school identified as urgent intervention required or comprehensive intervention required must submit a plan to the department for improvement and an application for funding to support its implementation. Urgent intervention needed is defined as a subgroup performance equal to a D or F in the current year. Urgent intervention required is defined as the subgroup performance equal to an F for 2 years and or an out-of-school suspension rate more than double the national average for 3 years. Comprehensive intervention required is defined as an overall performance of a D or an F for 3 years or 2 years for new schools and or a graduation rate less than 67% in the most recent year. Beginning in 2018-2019, schools that are UIR for 3 or more years will be identified as CIR. As a reminder, due to the approved waivers that keep performance scores and letter grades static, schools will remain in their intervention status from 2019. Managing schools with multiple labels. School systems may manage multiple designations across schools that are focused on CIR, UIR academics, and/or UIR discipline strategies. A school, though, should only focus on strategies for the one designation that will have the most significant impact on student outcomes. So if a school has a CIR label, then the school focuses their strategies on CIR. This year, across Louisiana, there are 266 schools planning for this label. If a school has a UIRA label and no CIR, then they will focus on UIR academics. Across the state, there are 266. And if a school has a UIR discipline label and no other labels, then their strategy focuses on UIR discipline, and across our state, we have 33 schools. We will now look at the 2021-2022 CIR and UIR requirements. Next school year, CIR and UIRA schools will continue to focus on these priorities. High-quality curriculum in all grade levels, CIR and UIRA required. high-quality professional development for all teachers on the selected curriculum, CIR and UIRA required. High-quality assessments required at both CIR and UIRA schools. Teacher preparation partner to address schools' greatest needs required at both CIR and UIRA schools. Increased school-based capacity through content leader and mentor teacher participation required in CIR schools. Student planning partners for the transition to college and/or a professional career required in CIR schools. Next school year, CIR and UIR schools will have some additional required and/or optional priorities. Improved participation in school support institutes required for both CIR and UIRA schools. New K-2 literacy content leaders required for CIR schools, but optional for UIRA schools. Improved certified ancillary mentor teachers required at CIR schools. And new culturally responsive professional development required at UIRD schools. We'll now take a deeper dive into the new or improved priorities for CIR and UIRA schools. We'll start off with the school support institutes. School-based instructional leadership teams play an important role in ensuring that teachers plan for and deliver instruction in a way that meets the needs of all students. And this is done by improving classroom instruction through analysis of teacher and student data, incorporating best practices for high-impact leader actions, and providing teachers with regular, high-quality feedback and support through an observation and feedback cycle. School leaders at CIR and UIRA schools and school system leaders will participate in high-quality school leader support programming at school support institutes. K-2 literacy content leaders. Early literacy is a critical predictor of educational and lifelong success. Teachers must be equipped with the knowledge and skills they need to effectively teach all students to read. Findings from research-based screening assessments over the last 3 school years show that scores have dropped at each grade level. This means fewer children are reading on grade level and more children are identified as at risk for reading failure each year. School systems are building opportunities for support in English language arts, grades K-2, by training K-2 literacy content leaders at all schools. School systems with CIR schools serving grades K-2 will train 1 K-2 literacy content leader per site. Certified ancillary for mentor teachers. School systems are working to build opportunities for advancement and support through the Mentor Teacher Initiative. In the past, the department has required CIR schools to have 1 trained mentor teacher. This requirement is shifting to having 1 certified mentor teacher ancillary or provisional mentor teacher at each CIR site in order to better align to what is required in policy. We'll now provide an update on Intervention Content Leader. Intervention Content Leader is a professional development initiative designed to build upon the Content Leader initiatives to deepen educator expertise in supporting all students, including diverse learners, in mastering grade-level content in ELA or math. Trainees participated in 7 days of professional development, but feedback indicated a desire for more focused professional development that clearly addresses how to support students with unfinished learning. In response, the department is planning to release professional development opportunities that will begin in 2021. In 2021, Super App Intervention Content Leader is no longer required at UIR academics schools, nor is it available for optional funding. Based on prior year's Super App submission, school systems may elect to continue Intervention Content Leader training during the 2020-2021 school year, but it is not required. We'll now take a look at the new priorities for CIR and UIRA. The School Support Institutes. School-based instructional leadership teams play an important role in ensuring teachers plan for and deliver instruction in a way that meets the needs of all students. The School Support Institutes are designed to support these teams in implementing the department's vision of an improving school by improving classroom instruction through analysis of teacher and student data, incorporating best practices for high-impact leader actions, and for providing teachers with regular, high-quality feedback and support through an observation feedback cycle. The new K-2 literacy content leaders. We're focused on this because early literacy is a critical predictor of educational and lifelong success. Teachers must be equipped with the knowledge and skills they need to effectively teach all students to read. Findings from research-based screening assessments over the last 3 school years show that scores have dropped at each grade level. This means fewer children are reading on grade level and more children are identified as at risk for reading failure each year. We're going to address this gap by school systems building opportunities for support in English language arts, grade K2, by training K2 literacy content leaders at all schools, and school systems with CIR schools serving grades K2 will be required to train only 1 K2 literacy content leader per site. New certified ancillary for mentor teachers. School systems are working to build opportunities for advancement and support through the Mentor Teacher Initiative. In the past, the department has required CIR schools to have 1 trained mentor teacher. This requirement is shifting to have 1 certified mentor teacher ancillary or provisional mentor teacher at each CIR site in order to better align to what is required in policy. New priorities for UIRD. In order for students to be successful, they must engage in a positive, inclusive, and culturally responsive learning environment that develops social, emotional, and academic skills to cultivate personal agency and lifelong success. Louisiana will build the capacity of educators to provide students the unique opportunity and support they require to be successful both personally and academically. Next school year, 2021-2022, UIRD schools will focus on professional development focused on unconscious bias, culturally responsive teaching, culturally responsive leadership, or diversity, equity, and inclusion training. I'll now turn the presentation over to my colleague, Hunter Brown.
Optional funding priorities. Next year, in the 2021-2022 school year, CIR and UIR academic schools will have access to several optional funding opportunities. Some of these will be continuations from last year's opportunities, and others will be new. This chart provides a high-level summary of what those options are. Continuing from last year, science curriculum, professional development, and science content leaders will be optional funding opportunities at CIR and UIR academic schools. A new optional funding opportunity is ongoing professional development at both CIR and UIR academic schools, as well as early literacy support at CIR and UIR academic schools. Continuing from last year will be specialized support professional development, which is optional at UIR academic schools. K2 literacy content leaders are new this year. They are required at CIR schools, but UIR academic schools have the option of requesting funding to also train those leaders at their sites. School improvement best practices will be optional at CIR schools. Literacy coaches will be optional at CIR and UIR academic schools. And early childhood, ages 3 through 5, now has access to optional funding within community networks for specialized support professional development as well. We'll now take a deeper look at each one of the new options for funding this year. Ongoing professional development. This funding opportunity offers CIR and UIR academic schools the option to apply for funds to provide ongoing support of high-quality curriculum in the form of professional development at their sites. Early literacy support. This funding offers the chance for CIR and UIR academic schools to purchase devices needed for one-to-one or internet connectivity devices, or individualized literacy tutoring for grades pre-K to 3. K-2 literacy content leaders. As mentioned before, this is required at CIR schools, but UIR academic schools can request optional funding to train these leaders. School systems that have CIR schools are able to apply for funds to adopt school improvement best practices related to instructional leadership team support, teacher collaboration support, teaching standards support, principal standards support, and career pipeline support. CIR and UIR academic schools can now apply for funding to support literacy coaches who will participate in state-mandated training and provide site-based intensive and quality professional development to local ELA instructors. Early childhood specialized support professional development for ages 3 through 5. Community networks can apply for these funds to offer this training. Another new opportunity this year is funding to support urgent intervention needed sites. A site is identified as urgent intervention needed, or UIN, when a subgroup earns a performance score equivalent to a D or an F. These are sites which may be in jeopardy of receiving a UIR academics label in the near future. While UIN schools are not required to submit a plan in the same way that CIR and UIRA schools are, LDOE has secured funding to support UIN schools in implementing a variety of ELA interventions for the 21-22 school year. In order to be eligible for this funding, schools with exclusively a UIN label must select yes on Super App question WT 5.2 after reviewing the linked CLSD UIN guidance document. To be exclusively UIN, this means a site has a label of urgent intervention needed, but does not have any other CIR or UIR labels at that same site. We'll now take a look at the resources that will assist school systems in planning for the 2021-2022 school year. The School System Planning Guide provides guidance on how a school system can build a plan and submit Super App for formula and competitive funds to support that plan. For those who are generally familiar with the school system planning process, each section throughout the guide includes a new this year call-out box, which highlights notable changes from last year. You see an example of that call-out here at the bottom of the slide. Within the School System Planning Guide, there are several key sections we'd like to call your attention to. First, on page 5 is the Super App section. This section provides the nuts and bolts of completing the Super App within the EGMS platform. The CIR and UIR strategy, approval, and funding on page 6. This is information about how your school system can meet the requirements in order to have an approved and funded CIR, UIR academics, UIR discipline, or UIN plan. The Super App Planning Checklist on page 12 identifies the steps a school system planning team might take in order to plan for and then submit Super App. The Super App timeline found on page 14 identifies the key dates running from the very beginning phases of planning through submission of Super App, as well as through the review process and ultimately allocations at April Bessie. On page 15 is what we call Appendix A, the planning framework and response guidance for each question that will appear in Super App. School systems can use this resource to go question by question and understand how to respond to the question, both from an approval standpoint and also how to request funding where available. Appendix B on page 26 identifies all CIR and UIR academic requirements for both approval and funding. Appendix C on page 27 identifies program-specific questions that school systems will answer related to direct student services and Carl Perkins. Appendix D on page 28 is the Super App submission checklist, which shows each tab that a school system will respond to and fill out as they complete Super App. The Super App Workbook. LDOE has created an editable Super App Workbook, which can be used for planning purposes in preparing to submit Super App through EGMS. We'll now take a very quick look at what this document looks like. The Super App Workbook goes question by question and illustrates what school systems will see when they respond to each question in Super App. As you can see, the 4 main sections of the document are core academics, students with diverse needs, workforce talent, and LEA systems. These are the same 4 planning priority sections that school systems will encounter in Super App. Each question is also set up in the same format that you will see in Super App, including drop-down boxes where applicable, as well as funding for local and federal and funding request boxes. I'll now hand it back to Delana to talk through school system support.
Support for completing the Super App will be provided through the School Improvement Library, the LDOE weekly newsletters, System Leader monthly calls, Super App planning support calls, School System Relations Team, and office hours scheduled on Fridays at 10 a.m. Details provided in the LDOE weekly newsletter. Send all questions related to school system planning and Super App to ldoe.grantshelpdesk@la.gov and include Super App in the subject line. Please note, during November, December, and January, regularly scheduled team monthly calls and office hours will provide opportunities for school system leaders to learn more about specific sections, ask questions, and receive guidance. New this year, the department will offer Super App planning support calls beginning in December, where teams can request one-on-one targeted guidance and support with planning, completing the workbook, and aligning funding to priorities. Once again, please contact ldoe.grantshelpdesk@la.gov and include Super App in the subject line.